today we're going to be talking about the issue of fatherlessness. So, Keion, thank you so much for coming. You have a long day, long flight, came in from Atlanta. So, Keion, starting from scratch, you played 2 sports coming up.
Right.
Basketball was where you started.
Right.
3 years old.
Yeah. So basketball was kind of my first love, I should say. My mom kind of put the basketball in my hand. It was a sport that I kind of gravitated to at an early age, and I loved it. Obviously at football, you got to be a certain age and a certain weight to play. But basketball was something that I always loved to do, and I did it, man. And at 3 years old, and even to this day, I still love the game. So it kept me busy. It was kind of a babysitting mechanism back in the day. It was something that I grew to love.
And it's interesting. You said your mom put the
Yeah.
basketball in your hand and not your dad. So was your mom a lover of sports or?
Yeah, my mom loved sports. I mean, she loves, football. She was a football fanatic. She was a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And obviously loved basketball. And, I just think from, with her having a boy, everybody that has a boy, they just want to kind of, throw a ball or something in their hand and see kind of what they go with it. And she threw it to me, and I just kind of took it and ran with it.
At 11, 12 years old, you started really getting recognition that you could play.
Yeah, it was a little weird. I had a lot of coaches and a lot of other people that were watching me play. Kind of thought that I had a little bit more than the average 11 and 12-year-old. And I kind of started to sense that myself, started smelling myself a little bit, as we all do as young kids. And yeah, so, it was good to be able to go through that phase of my life, getting that recognition so young, learning how to deal with it and learning how to handle it, because it carried on through my high school career, through my college career, and eventually through my professional career.
There was something that was missing, though, in that process,
Right.
So you had everybody cheering for you, but you said you felt like a sense of loneliness or emptiness, but what was that? What was the root?
Well, I mean, I didn't have my dad. I didn't know who he was. Never had seen a picture of him. I used to envy kids who had their fathers in their lives. And it's crazy because even at the age of like 8 or 9, my dad was my motivation, and he wasn't even in my life. And what I mean by that is I used to look at my opponents as him. So when I would go hit another child, I would envision hitting my dad. And I kind of used that anger that I had, and I put it into sports and not the streets. And I think that's kind of where things kind of go south, and a lot of the problems that we have out here is because the fathers are not stepping up and taking their responsibilities, or just being there. And it was hard for me to articulate that at a young age to my mom, because she was doing everything that she could, for me, and I didn't want her to think that what she was doing wasn't enough.
Right.
But I still needed the presence of my father.
Of course.
And so I struggled with that, pretty much my whole life.
Not only did you not have a relationship with your dad,
Right.
but you were a secret, but you also had a sibling, a sister.
Absolutely. I had an older sister who was 2 years older than me. The crazy thing is that we shared the same friends, even went to the same school for a brief minute, but she knew absolutely nothing about who I was. Obviously, I knew who she was because my mom knew that he had already had, a child before she conceived. But yeah, so I missed out on that relationship, missed out having that brother-sister relationship. And, her and our relationship is great now that we're older. There's just so much that we missed out on, just because my father at the time chose not to, for whatever reasons, just chose not to accept his responsibility.
So how did you and your sister make that connection? Like, was it a conversation? Did you go to her?
I think it was through a mutual friend, and I think it was around Facebook, because that's how we kind of reconnected. Because like I said, some of her good friends I was friends with, so I think that's how the connection made. And then once her and I connected, met, and started developing a relationship, she really was the one that encouraged me to finally meet my dad. And at that time, I was 21, 22. I was a rookie in the NFL. I mean, I was a grown man at the time. But I think it was something that I needed to do as a man to kind of put that part of my life behind, because it was just some open wounds that I had never dealt with before.
And so your sister sets up the meeting. You walk into the room. Your dad is there.
Right.
Now, tell me about that unique meeting.
That was probably one of the most awkwardest times in my life. He obviously embraced me with tears, and I didn't feel anything. You know, I'm like hugging him like, okay, so what do I do? Am I supposed to cry too? Like, cause I don't really feel like what you feeling. You know, I'm young, and I already had attitude issues, and now it's like, okay, here's the man that I kind of despised my whole life, and now I'm face to face with you, and now like, what am I supposed to do? And I just was kind of just lost and blank. You know, with so many questions running through my mind, there was so many emotions running through my mind, but I didn't want to ruin the moment, by me being in my emotions. So, after we embraced, we kind of talked, and it wasn't just he and I. It was like, my other set of grandparents, his mom and dad were there, and some other family members there. So I'm walking into a house, and it's like, who are you people? You know what I mean? Like, and did y'all know about me? Like, where were y'all? Like, where the hell were y'all? Why nobody wanted to reach out, to me and just to see if I was okay?
Did you get what you think you wanted out of that moment?
I don't even know I could have.
Okay. So why do you say that?
Mentally, I don't think I was ready to receive whatever he had to tell me. Okay. Because if he would have told me the truth, I don't know if I would have been receptive to it. I was still young, and I was a little ignorant at the time, and I was just in my feelings, because I just, and I had just had my first child. So here you go, I'm just meeting a man who I'm 22, 21, 22 years old, and now I've had my first child, and it is no way in hell that I could figure out how I could be away from my child.
Right.
So I'm looking at him like, well, what's wrong with you? Or what was wrong with me? It was something about me that you didn't want to accept that responsibility. Did I do something wrong? And like I said, those are the things that I know I struggle with, and so many young kids struggle with, and it's not even fair because I didn't ask to be here. Right. No kid asked to be here. And so I don't know if I would have been ready for that. I don't. So I didn't, to answer your question, I didn't get the answers.
So over the years, you guys have kind of tried to build some type of rapport.
And my heart has softened, a lot. And, my relationship with God has grown a lot. I had to first forgive him, not really for not being there for me. I wanted to forgive him for what he did to my mother. Right. And that was the toughest thing that I had to get over, because I think the world of my mother. She's the greatest woman on earth. And for her to have to struggle when she didn't have to.
Your mom waited until you were grown to kind of disclose some of the things, like $10 a month for child support a week.
It's crazy because I didn't even ask her until I started to indulge in this book. I never really asked her about that whole situation, and she never spoke negative about it. So that was a good thing. I didn't have to, he wasn't prejudged. I just had my own personal feelings of, why you do this to my mom, and I think once I got over that, I was ready to kind of just move forward and try to establish some type of relationship with her.
Right, exactly. And so with your book, Covered, The Fatherless Athlete, you talk about so many different issues. You wanted to not only touch the kids, but also the parents, the teachers, whoever may be interacting with the child. So that process, what was that like for you? I know you had a lot of emotions going through the writing of the book.
It was deep. It was really deep, and it touched us to the core of a man and who I am today, and it made me realize why I am and who I am today. And I wanted this book to be more of a motivational thing, and I'm not trying to bash fathers, who are not in their child's life, and I'm not bashing my own dad. It's basically, the message is simple. Look, regardless of what your relationship is with the child's mother or father, you have to put that aside for the betterment of the child, period. And I think that we just need to get to that. You don't have to, in a perfect world, yes, you want to be married and have a good family and picket fence. That's all good. But in reality, it's not happening like that. So what I want to do is shed light to what a child is thinking at 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years old, number one. And just because this child may seem happy and he may smile and everything may seem okay, he's still struggling because it's a part of him that's missing. And I hear a lot of women say, well, I don't need the daddy and I can do this and do that. That's not true. Because I think my mom did the very best that she could, but I still needed my dad, period. And fathers need to be there for their children. So it's twofold.
Right.
It's telling the story from a 8-year-old, 15-year-old child now, as a 36-year-old man, now being able to articulate those feelings, and then also shedding some light to some parents to some things that they may not have a clue of,
right,
that they can pick up on and just start those conversations with their sons and their daughters.
So Keion, in that process though, speaking to those who feel like they don't need a man in their son or daughter's life, I mean, what do you feel like you needed the most as a young man, just as a young man?
I needed his presence. I needed him just being there. When I was struggling, going through a lot of situations, be it sports, I just needed his comfort. I just needed him to just say it's going to be all right. Same thing I do to my son. So it's just something that a father's presence and a father's love just brings a sense of calmness to a child.
Right.
I know that I give my children that. And, doesn't have to be anything extravagant.
Right.
Like I said before, like the money, you could have kept that. You could have kept your $10 or whatever it was.
Right.
Man, just come give me 10 minutes. Because those 10 minutes that you would have spent with me would have lasted me a lifetime. And I do very well for my children, but they don't remember anything that I bought them. They remember the times that we spent together. And that's what's most important.
And so you've also taken that outside of your own family structure,
right,
and you have the Shutdown Academy. You work with a lot of young athletes. What is like one of the biggest concerns that these young men come to you with that don't have fathers?
Well, it's really not the concerns that they have. It's just the sense of hopelessness that they feel. They just feel like they have no hope, and it's nothing there. It's nobody's there for them, and they keep getting disappointed and let down. And I want to remove that from them, because if I could make it, without a Shutdown Academy, and a guy that has went through to the NFL, that is trying to guide me through all of my shortcomings, if I could do it without that, then it's no excuse for none of my kids not to be successful. And I think that's just the major part of it. Kids don't really communicate well, so I don't really know what they're going through in their mind. But because I'm one of them, I was one of them, I understand.
And you can see their emotions
right
on the field.
I know exactly what they're going through because I was them.
Looking at the emotions that they feel, you know, what was something that you struggled with when you were out there?
It was acceptance. For me, I battled with that. I've always wanted to be accepted by everybody. I always wanted everybody to be cool and everybody to be happy and everybody to like me, because for so long I didn't understand why my dad didn't accept me. I didn't understand if it was something that I did or didn't do. So I've always tried to be the best that I could be, and that's why I always take it to heart when I don't feel accepted by someone genuinely, because I just think I'm a genuine guy full of love for everybody, but everybody's not going to like you. It's just the world we live in, and I know so many kids struggle with that. That's why they go to gangs and go to these other negative situations, because everybody may don't have the love for sports that I had to gravitate to, and get that acceptance from. And so I know a lot of kids struggle with that, but they're too young to articulate what that means.
How do you know that the acceptance piece is not really about you, it's about what you went through?
That's why I show all of these kids so much unconditional love. I show them love no matter what. I'm consistent with what we're doing. And what I say, I try to stand by it. When I tell them that I'm going to come, I show up. So it's just being consistent in my approach, and just having that love for those kids that God got for us. It's just unconditional. None of us are perfect. We all got our shortcomings, and we all make mistakes. But at the end of the day, He still loves us. And if I can just show them kids that type of love, then at the end of the day, I'm serving my purpose.
And so in writing Covered, you went through the whole process. In writing out your story, communicating it to the world essentially, do you feel like there's anything that you would have done differently?
No. And I struggle with that because it's like, okay, I'm about to open up a big chunk of my life to the world. And there's some people that been knowing me 36 years don't even know the half of my struggles that they're going to learn about in this book. It's some stuff that my mother don't even know that she's going to learn about in this book. So I just think that, our lives are to be lived for others. And we all have a story. And it's up to us whether we're willing to accept that responsibility to share it. So I wouldn't change anything because everything that I've gone through in my life is what made me who I am today. The good, the bad, the ugly, it's what made me and shaped me and molded me to the man that I am today.